In the sun-scorched expanse of Arizona's Sonoran desert, Thomas McKenna tends to his cattle with the measured patience of a lifelong rancher. To his neighbors in the quiet town of Shadow Creek, he's just the serious-minded owner of the Broken Spur Ranch, known for his prize-winning quarter horses and unmatched skill at breaking wild stallions. They see his weathered face and steady hands, never suspecting what those hands once did. What the Red Scorpion gang is about to learn the hard way is that Thomas McKenna has another name in the U.S. Marshal's historical records. For 12 years, he was Lightning Hand McKenna, the legendary Marshal Service gunslinger with 27 confirmed kills and a reputation that made hardened outlaws turn and flee at the mere whisper of his approach. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun paints long shadows across the desert landscape as Thomas completes his dawn patrol of the ranch's perimeter. His boots leave precise tracks in the sandy soil, each step placed with unconscious efficiency born from years of tracking outlaws across unforgiving terrain. He pauses at the eastern fence line, ostensibly checking loose barbed wire, but his trained eyes scan the distant ridgeline with practiced precision. The sound of approaching vehicles echoes off the canyon walls. 2 heavy trucks, he notes automatically, and a lighter vehicle, probably a jeep. Same pattern as yesterday, different drivers. Wire giving you trouble again? Sarah McKenna's voice carries from the stables, his wife of 15 years, reading the subtle tension in his stance, just as she once read dispatch codes during her own days with the Marshal Service. Just a loose section, Thomas calls back, keeping his tone casual while his mind calculates distances, angles, potential approach vectors. Might need to replace the whole stretch come winter. The vehicles grow louder, then fade, another probing run like the dozen others this week. The Red Scorpion gang marking their territory, establishing patterns, looking for weaknesses. Thomas recognizes their tactics. He taught similar techniques himself in another life, training young marshals to hunt the very kind of predators now circling his home. Inside the ranch house, the morning paper lies open on the kitchen table. Another local spread sold well below market value, the 3rd one this month. The coffee pot burbles as Sarah enters, her weathered face creased with concern. "Johnson's place went for half what it's worth," she says, pouring 2 cups. "Sheriff, Rivera claims they were eager to sell, but the Johnsons worked that land for 30 years. Thomas finishes, accepting the coffee. Never mentioned selling before the Scorpions showed up. The sound of engines returns, closer this time. Through the kitchen window, Thomas spots the vehicles, 2 modified pickup trucks bristling with hidden modifications, and a desert-rigged jeep. Their leader, Marcus Cruz, rides in the lead truck, his enforcer known only as the Butcher, following close behind. They're getting bolder. "Deputy Martinez stopped by yesterday," Sarah continues, her voice low. "Says they're just passing through, part of some land development deal." She meets her husband's eyes. "You believe that?" "About as much as you do." Thomas keeps his voice neutral, but his eyes never leave the vehicles. Marcus Cruz's head turns to study the property, gaze lingering on key tactical positions: the barn's upper window, the elevated water tower, the rocky outcrop overlooking the main approach. Thomas recognizes the look. He used to study properties the same way, back when he hunted men like Cruz across the border territories. "They're planning something," he says softly. "Those aren't random patrols. They're gathering intelligence, establishing patterns, looking for..." He catches himself, nearly slipping into tactical terminology that would seem odd coming from a simple rancher. But Sarah understands. She always does. A truck appears on the road, Dr. Maria Ramirez's old Ford pickup. The gang's vehicles surround it, forcing it to stop. Thomas sets down his coffee, body tensing imperceptibly as he watches the confrontation unfold. Cruz leans toward the driver's window, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "Doc, been meaning to talk to you about that clinic lease." Maria's response is inaudible, but her body language speaks volumes. Shoulders tight, hands clenched on the steering wheel. Thomas recognizes the signs of someone being threatened, being forced into a corner. He's seen it countless times before in dusty border towns and remote desert outposts. "Think carefully about our offer." Cruz's voice carries that false friendliness that poorly masks menace. "Hate to see anything happen to that nice new medical equipment." The vehicles roar away, leaving Maria's truck in a cloud of dust. Thomas watches his friend grip the steering wheel for long moments before continuing toward town, her truck's path slightly unsteady. "They're not just targeting ranches," Sarah says quietly. "They're moving on the whole town. The clinic, probably. First, then the stores." "Standard pattern," Thomas agrees, years of tactical experience surfacing in his analysis. Isolate, intimidate, control. Sarah studies her husband's face, seeing the lawman he once was, emerging from behind his careful mask. "Tom, are we going to have to leave?" Thomas turns from the window, and for just a moment Sarah sees behind his rancher's facade to the legendary marshal he'd once been, the man whose lightning-fast draw had become a story told in whispers around border town campfires. "No," he says softly. "We're not leaving, but it's time to make some preparations." As if to punctuate his words, more vehicles appear on the horizon. This time, it's both trucks and the Jeep, with Cruz again in the lead. They're done probing, done gathering intelligence. Now they're coming to make their play. Thomas's hand brushes unconsciously against his hip, where a gunfighter's holster once rode. The Red Scorpion gang thinks they're about to pressure a simple rancher. Instead, they're about to learn why some of the West's most dangerous outlaws still speak of Lightning Hand McKenna in hushed, fearful tones. "Sarah," he says quietly, "I think you should head into town. Maybe check on that storage unit we never talk about." His wife nods, understanding perfectly. The time for maintaining cover is ending. The gunslinger is awakening. Dust billows behind the approaching vehicles as they roar up the ranch's gravel drive. Thomas watches from the porch, hands relaxed at his sides, posture deliberately uncertain. Everything about his stance projects vulnerability, exactly what Cruz and his men expect to see. They don't notice how his weight is perfectly balanced, how his position gives him clear views of all approaches, how he's already noted their weapons and tactical weaknesses. Through the shimmering heat waves rising from the desert floor, Thomas watches Cruz's vehicles spread out in a practice formation. The butcher takes point, his scarred face visible through the truck's windshield, while two enforcers named Viper and Snake position their Jeep to cover potential escape routes. Their tactical positioning would be impressive if Thomas hadn't seen better in 100 border town showdowns. Inside the ranch house, his personal radio crackles, an old model he'd kept from his Marshal days, modified to monitor local frequencies. Through the static, he catches fragments of conversation between Cruz's men. "Perimeter secured. No sign of. Backup position Alpha." Thomas allows himself a slight smile. They're using old cartel protocols, probably taught by some washed-out enforcer who never realized these same codes had helped marshals track smuggling routes for years. The morning heat intensifies as Cruz kills his engine, the sudden silence heavy with menace. His boots crunch on gravel as he approaches the porch steps, stopping just short and looking up at Thomas. Everything about his stance screams military. Background, probably special forces gone bad, Thomas notes, recognizing the controlled movements he'd seen in a dozen fugitives he'd tracked across the border. "Mr. McKenna," Cruz's voice carries that false charm that poorly masks predatory intent. "Beautiful morning for a visit." He gestures broadly at the ranch, Been admiring your operation, the way you handle those quarter horses. Impressive. Man can tell you've spent years building this place. What do you want, Mr. Cruz? Thomas lets a slight tremor enter his voice, playing the part of an intimidated rancher while his mind calculates draw angles and firing lines. Through his peripheral vision, he spots the butcher's hand resting near his concealed weapon. Modified Colt, 1911, poor grip technique, 3 seconds to draw at best. Direct man, I appreciate that. Cruz spreads his hands in a gesture of reasonable negotiation. We represent certain investment interests, looking to develop this whole valley. Progress, you understand? And your ranch. Well, it's a key piece of the puzzle. A cloud of dust appears on the horizon, Michael Chen's delivery truck approaching his weekly supply run to the local stores. Cruz's men tense slightly, but their leader waves them down. Thomas notes how their hands stay near their weapons, how their eyes track the vehicle's approach, more pieces of the puzzle falling into place. $5 million, Cruz continues, well above market value because we respect what you've built here. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. We're businessmen, Mr. McKenna. We believe in fair compensation. The screen door creaks as Maria Ramirez steps onto the porch. Her arrival not a coincidence. Thomas had recognized her truck's dust trail through the heat waves minutes ago, a calculated risk, but one he needed to take. Tom. Maria's voice carries genuine concern. Brought those medications for the horses you asked about. Cruz's men tense at the unexpected arrival. The butcher takes 2 steps forward, hand drifting toward his weapon, but Cruz waves him back. Doctor. Ramirez. Not expecting to see you out here. Thought you'd be busy at the clinic considering recent developments. Maria's shoulders tighten almost imperceptibly. Just making my rounds, Mr. Cruz. Some of us still believe in taking care of our neighbors. The implied criticism makes Viper step forward aggressively, but Cruz stops him with a sharp gesture. His careful mask of civility stays in place, but Thomas sees the cold calculation beneath. He's reassessing the situation, recognizing that witnesses complicate things. Speaking of neighbors, Cruz's tone shifts subtly. You should ask Dr. Ramirez about the benefits of progress, about how change is inevitable in a place like this, about what happens to people who don't adapt. Maria's hand finds Thomas's arm, a gesture of support that also serves to sell the image of frightened townsfolk. But Thomas notes how her fingers tap quietly, 3 quick touches, an old border signal meaning multiple hostile teams. She's seen something in town. The clinic lease, Thomas says carefully, watching Cruz's reaction. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not just our ranch, but the whole valley. Smart man. Cruz's smile widens fractionally. See, that's why I wanted to handle this personally. You understand the bigger picture, how everything connects. He steps closer, boots on the first porch step. The ranch, the clinic, the roads leading south, it's all part of a plan. Progress, development, future. A burst of static comes from the butcher's radio, a voice partially masked by interference. Shipment confirmed. Loading at Devil's Canyon. Need cleanup at waypoint 3. Cruz's expression flickers for just a moment, annoyance at the operational security breach. Thomas mentally logs every detail, Devil's Canyon location, the term waypoint, the implied logistics chain, pieces of a larger puzzle starting to form. Think about the offer, Mr. McKenna. Cruz backs away, maintaining eye contact. 5 million buys a lot of peace of mind, lot of security, lot of insurance. The threat hangs in the air like smoke. The vehicles depart with practiced coordination. As they roar away, Thomas notices how they split at the road, 3 heading toward town, 2 turning south toward Devil's Canyon. Another piece of the puzzle. They're watching the clinic, Maria says quietly once the vehicles are gone. Men I've never seen before, taking pictures, making notes. This morning they... She stops, hands shaking slightly. Tell me. Thomas keeps his voice gentle, while his mind calculates angles, options, strategies. They destroyed my new X-ray machine, said it was an accident. Said it would be a shame if more accidents happened. Regular inspections failed, licenses revoked. Maria's voice hardens. They're trying to force me out, just like the Johnson Ranch, just like the others. Thomas guides his friend inside, mind working on multiple levels. The clinic's location near the southern road, the ranch's strategic position, Devil's Canyon's abandoned mines, waypoints and shipments and cleanup crews. A pattern emerging, one he'd seen before in darker places, along the border. Tom. Maria's voice carries years of friendship, of unspoken understanding. I know that look. I remember it from before, from when we served together. Thomas moves to the window, watching dust clouds fade on the horizon. They're not just buying land, he says quietly. They're building a corridor. Supply lines, transfer, and points, using legitimate businesses as cover. His voice carries the same tactical precision that once made cartel leaders tremble. The question is, what are they moving? A distant engine rumbles, another of Cruz's vehicles approaching. Through his spotting scope, Thomas recognizes Viper returning alone. He dismounts at the gate, zip-ties something to the fence post. Even from here, Thomas can see the red warning sign, condemnation notice. They're done playing nice, Maria observes. No, Thomas agrees softly. Now they'll try force, pressure, intimidation. He turns from the window, and Maria sees her. Friend's careful mask slip, revealing the legendary lawman beneath. What they don't understand is that some people don't respond well to pressure. Some people push back. The sound of more vehicles echoes off distant canyon walls. The Red Scorpion gang is mobilizing in force, preparing to take what they want. But they're about to learn that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who appear the weakest, the ones who know how to wait, the ones who've spent years hiding their true nature. The Gunslinger is stirring. The hunt is about to begin. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Pre-dawn light creeps over the Sonoran mountains as Thomas retrieves his hidden trail cameras. The memory cards contain 3 days of surveillance. Every vehicle passing the southern road, every suspicious movement near Devil's Canyon. He works with practiced efficiency, leaving no trace of his presence. Years of tracking outlaws don't fade. They just find new applications. The general store's lights are already on when he arrives in town. Jack Morrison's ancient pickup sits, alone in the gravel lot, frost still coating its windshield despite the desert heat building. Thomas notes fresh tire tracks in the dust. Someone's been watching the store all night. Didn't expect anyone this early. Jack's voice carries forced cheerfulness as Thomas enters. The older man's hands shake slightly as he arranges canned goods, eyes darting frequently to the window. Coffee's fresh if you'd like. Thanks. Thomas studies the store's interior, noting signs of a recent confrontation. Scattered merchandise hastily replaced, a broken shelf poorly repaired. Rough night? Just some new customers. Jack attempts a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, very persistent about their shopping preferences. A motorcycle rumbles past outside, the butcher making his morning patrol. Thomas watches through the window as the enforcer parks across the street, maintaining clear sightlines into the store. Amateur surveillance, but effective enough to intimidate locals. They're demanding protection money, Jack whispers, arranging cans with shaking hands. Said if I don't pay, accidents might happen, deliveries getting lost, health inspectors finding violations. He straightens a display of local honey, talking without making eye contact. Last night that big one calls himself the Butcher made it clear I had until Friday. His voice drops lower. Sheriff Rivera says they're just passing through, that I should be reasonable, work with them, but you should see how they look at my daughter when she's helping at the register. Thomas's hand tightens imperceptibly on his coffee cup. Through the window, he spots Deputy Lisa Chen's patrol car approaching. The deputy parks deliberately between the store and the Butcher's observation position. Mr. McKenna. Lisa enters, nodding professionally. Her uniform is crisp, but dark circles under her eyes suggest long nights. Mind if I join you, ladies and gentlemen? The Butcher revs his engine in obvious irritation before speeding away. Thomas notes how he takes the South Road, another piece of the pattern. Got something you should see, Lisa says quietly once he's gone. She spreads photographs on the counter, surveillance shots from Devil's Canyon taken last night. Been monitoring wildlife patterns, got some interesting images. The photos show vehicles arriving at the canyon, expensive SUVs with blacked-out windows, rental trucks with missing plates, but Thomas's attention fixes on cargo being unloaded, long wooden crates with distinctive markings. Those aren't hunting rifles, he observes neutrally. No, sir. Lisa's voice carries controlled anger. And the men unloading them had military, bearing, professional, not your typical gang members. She hesitates. Sheriff says it's not our jurisdiction to leave it alone. But my brother served. I know military hardware when I see it. New engines approach, multiple vehicles, heavy rumbling. Thomas guides both others away from the windows as the Butcher returns with reinforcements. Viper and Snake flank him, their formation suggesting anticipated violence. Think carefully about your next insurance payment, Jack, the Butcher calls. Through the open door. Rates go up fast in this economy. Lisa moves to intervene, but Thomas's hand on her arm stops her. Not yet, he says softly. Some battles need proper preparation. The vehicles roar away, but their message lingers. Jack's hands still shake as he straightens merchandise. There's more, Lisa continues once they're gone. County records show most of these property sales aren't just below market value. They're being processed through shell companies, businesses that didn't exist a month ago. And the paperwork's getting rushed through, signatures verified by... She stops, implications clear. By Sheriff Rivera, Thomas finishes, another piece of the puzzle. Lisa nods grimly. Someone's building something big, using the gang as muscle, using legitimate businesses as cover. But what worries me most... She produces one final photo. A familiar face, meeting with Cruz at Devil's Canyon. Thomas studies the image carefully. The man with Cruz carries himself with military precision, wears civilian clothes that don't quite hide his tactical gear. He recognizes the type. Private, security contractor, probably ex-special forces. The real professionals behind Red Scorpion's operation. Deputy, he says carefully, those wildlife cameras, they record at night when properly configured. Lisa's tone suggests understanding. Might take me a few days to adjust them, reposition some, particularly around waypoint 3, wherever that is. Thomas nods appreciation for the deputy's careful phrasing. Jack, about that insurance problem, I might know someone who specializes in high-risk coverage. Later, driving home, Thomas spots fresh vehicle tracks turning south toward Devil's Canyon. Their pattern suggests heavy loads, military transport protocols. He pulls off at a hidden turnout, retrieving a satellite phone from a concealed compartment. The number he dials hasn't been used in years, but old connections never really die. When the line connects, he speaks in clipped tones that would surprise his neighbors. Authentication code Lightning 7. Need background on private security operations in Arizona sector. Focus on weapons trafficking patterns matching Sonora protocol. The response is immediate. Lightning hand, confirm. Contact data incoming. Be advised, multiple agencies monitoring similar activity. Region designated high priority. Thomas ends the call. Mind processing implications. The Red Scorpion Gang isn't just another border criminal operation. They're frontline troops in something bigger, probably not even aware who they're really working for. But now, a gunslinger is watching, gathering intelligence, preparing to strike. And gunslingers, as certain people are about to learn, are very patient hunters. Sarah's truck kicks up dust as it races down the ranch road, moving faster than her usual careful pace. Thomas spots 3 vehicles following at a distance, harassment becoming more overt. He waits on the porch, counting seconds until the vehicles turn back, noting their patrol pattern. "Bank's refusing our equipment loan," Sarah announces as she exits her truck, hands shaking with barely controlled anger. "Manager couldn't look me in the eye, just kept saying policies had changed." She hands Thomas a folder of papers. "Then I saw who was waiting in his office, Cruz and Sheriff Rivera." Thomas scans the documents, noting irregularities, loan applications suddenly denied, property taxes reassessed, equipment leases appearing from nowhere. Financial warfare designed to pressure sellers into quick deals. "That's not all." Sarah continues, voice low. "Overheard Cruz talking about shipping manifests, military equipment being moved through old mining routes. Sheriff's deputies are being told to avoid certain roads on certain nights." A truck appears on the horizon, Maria's vehicle moving erratically. 2 of Cruz's trucks flank it aggressively, forcing her onto the shoulder. Thomas's hand tightens on the porch railing, body tensing as he recognizes the Butcher and Viper performing. The escort. The truck skids to a stop in their yard. Maria stumbles out, medical bag clutched tight. Her clinic coat shows signs of a struggle. Torn sleeve, dusty handprint on the back. "Inside," Thomas orders, scanning for surveillance. The trucks circle once before departing, a clear message delivered. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Maria's voice shakes as she accepts Sarah's offered coffee. 4 men in tactical gear came to the clinic, said they needed a discreet medical facility, someone to handle workplace accidents without asking questions. She opens her bag, removing a crumpled paper. "I found this in one of their jackets when they were intimidating my nurse." Thomas studies the document. Partial shipping manifest, professional formatting, military equipment being moved through multiple checkpoints, each requiring medical cover for high-risk operations. "Called Sheriff Rivera," Maria continues. "He said they're legitimate security contractors, that I should cooperate. Then the Butcher showed up, said the same thing, more directly." She pushes up her sleeve, revealing finger-shaped bruises. "Made his point clear." Sarah moves to say something, but Thomas raises his hand slightly. Engine sounds approach, not trucks this time. A black SUV with tinted windows turns into their drive, followed by 2 escort vehicles. Thomas recognizes the military precision of their formation. "Sarah," he says quietly, "get Maria to the back room. Call Deputy Chen. Tell her it's time." Cruz exits the SUV, but he's not alone. A man in expensive tactical clothing joins him. The same contractor from Lisa's surveillance photos. They approach the porch with practiced coordination, flanked by the Butcher and Snake. "Mr. McKenna." Cruz's false charm has vanished, replaced by cold efficiency. "We need to conclude our business today." The contractor steps forward. His stance, his bearing, the way his eyes constantly scan everything, screams special operations background. "Sir, I represent certain development interests. We've acquired all necessary properties in this area except yours. This is a courtesy. Call before legal proceedings begin." Thomas lets his posture suggest fear, but his mind catalogues tactical details. How many weapons they're carrying, their fields of fire, the way the contractor favors his left side. Old injury, exploitable weakness. "I don't understand." He forces a tremor into his voice. "What legal proceedings?" Property inspections. Cruz smiles without warmth. Safety regulations, environmental surveys. Amazing how many violations. Turn up when people look closely. Ask Dr. Ramirez about regulatory compliance. A phone rings. The contractor answers, steps away to talk. Thomas's enhanced hearing catches fragments. Shipment confirmed. And security teams in position. Medical coverage arranged. 2 hours. $5 million, Cruz states flatly. Sign the transfer papers, take the money, leave the area, or we do this differently. He glances toward the house. Doctor, Ramirez has already learned about different approaches. Don't make us teach you too. They depart with military precision, but Thomas catches the contractor making hand signals to hidden observers. More vehicles appear on distant ridgelines, Red Scorpion deploying in force. Inside, Thomas moves with focused purpose. Hidden caches reveal weapon caches Sarah never knew existed. Surveillance equipment emerges from concealed compartments. Those aren't regular contractors, Maria observes, recognizing military gear. Private security doesn't carry that level of hardware. No, Thomas agrees, checking sightlines through windows. They're running a major weapons smuggling operation, using the gang for cover, buying properties to control transport routes. The clinic would handle any casualties, keep things quiet. His voice shifts to the clipped tones of operational planning. But they made mistakes, got sloppy, forgot to ask why this particular piece of land had never been sold. A burst of static from a hidden radio, Deputy Chen's voice. Multiple vehicles moving south, military transport pattern. They're mobilizing. Sarah watches her husband check weapons with practiced efficiency. Tom, what aren't you telling me about this? Land, why you chose it. The sight lines, he answers quietly. The defensive positions, the old Prohibition tunnel system. Perfect for monitoring north-south traffic through the valley. He meets her eyes. Perfect for a gunslinger to hunt from. Outside, more vehicles gather on distant roads. The Red Scorpion gang is preparing for war, not realizing they're just pawns in a larger game. But Thomas McKenna didn't spend 12 years as the Marshal Service's deadliest gunslinger by being predictable. Sarah, he says softly, remember that storage unit, time to open everything, all of it. The trap is set. The hunter is about to become prey. Darkness shrouds the valley as Thomas checks his surveillance feeds. The old hunting cameras, strategically placed weeks ago, show Red Scorpion's entire operation. Vehicles moving in formation, trucks arriving at Devil's Canyon, contractors establishing security perimeters. They think they're being careful. They don't realize they're being hunted. His satellite phone buzzes. Deputy Chen's coded message. Multiple vehicles at waypoint 3, military crates, armed escorts. Through his spotting scope, Thomas watches contractors direct a convoy of unmarked trucks. Their movements are professional, coordinated, but they've missed the obvious. High ground gives clear views of their secret route. Sarah returns from town, her expression grim. They're hitting everyone now. Jack's store, the diner, even old Thompson's feed supply. The butcher and Viper are leading teams through town, demanding protection money, making examples of anyone who resists. A scream pierces the night. Jack Morrison's voice carrying from the general store. Thomas is already moving as 3 vehicles roar past their ranch, the butcher leading the pack toward town. They're escalating faster than expected, forcing him to accelerate his timeline. Stay here, he tells Sarah, retrieving gear from hidden caches. If Cruz comes, stick to the story. Just a frightened rancher considering their offer. The store's windows are broken when he arrives, merchandise scattered across the sidewalk. Snake stands guard outside while the butcher and Viper terrorize those inside. Deputy Chen's patrol car sits empty nearby. They've timed this during her northern route. Thomas approaches like any concerned neighbor would, but his mind calculates angles, positions, vulnerabilities. Through the broken glass, he sees Jack. Backed against the register, his teenage daughter Emily held roughly by Viper. Insurance payments doubled, the butcher announces, sweeping canned goods off shelves. Price of doing business keeps going up. Shame if something happened to your girl while she's walking home from school. Everything all right here? Thomas's voice carries just the right mix of concern and fear. Perfect bait. Viper shoves Emily aside, turning toward the new target. Private business discussion, Mr. McKenna. Best move along before you have your own accident. Thomas lets them see his trembling hands, his nervous posture, lets them think they're the predators. But he's already noted their tactical mistakes. Poor position relative to exits, weapons stored for show rather than quick access, no real combat awareness. Just came to buy supplies, he stammers, carefully moving to block their sight lines through the front windows. Please don't hurt anyone. The butcher laughs, moving closer. Actually, glad you're here. Cruz wants to know if you've reconsidered his offer. Deadline's getting real close. A vehicle approaches, not police, but one of the contractor's SUVs. The driver, face hidden behind tactical gear, signals urgently to the butcher. Thomas catches their whispered conversation. Shipment compromised. Mechanical failures. Need immediate backup. The butcher curses, grabbing his radio. Through the static, Thomas hears growing chaos, trucks broken down, mysterious equipment failures, security cameras malfunctioning. Almost like someone with law enforcement experience had anticipated their route and taken appropriate countermeasures. We're not finished here, Viper growls, shoving past Thomas. The vehicles roar away toward Devil's Canyon, leaving scattered merchandise and terrified civilians in their wake. They'll be back, Jack whispers, holding his sobbing daughter. Probably. Bring more next time. Make an example. No, Thomas says quietly, helping them clean up. They won't. Through the window, he spots Deputy Chen's patrol car returning, right on schedule, everything proceeding according to plan. His phone vibrates, encrypted message from old Marshal Service contacts. Surveillance confirmed, weapons matching, restricted federal protocols, international buyers involved. Another message follows from Lisa. Sheriff Rivera ordering patrols away from South Roads tonight. Major shipment planned. Thomas helps Jack board up windows while his mind processes intel. Red Scorpion is just the visible threat. Street-level muscle. The real operation is bigger. Professional contractors, international arms dealers, corrupted. Officials. A complex machine with many moving parts, but machines can be broken piece by piece, component by component. The store's landline rings, Cruz himself making threats, demanding compliance. But Thomas hears something else in the background. Arguing contractors. Frustrated buyers, operational plans unraveling as equipment mysteriously fails. They're getting desperate, he tells Jack once the call ends, making mistakes, showing their hand. How can you be so sure? Thomas allows himself a small smile. Because I've seen this before. Men like this, they thrive on fear, control, intimidation. Take that away. He lets the thought hang as more vehicles roar past, heading south with increasing urgency. His phone buzzes again, Sarah warning that Cruz is heading toward the clinic. The next phase is starting. Pressure, increasing as their operation faces delays. But pressure reveals weaknesses, creates opportunities. Time to let them think they've won the first round. Let them focus on bullying shopkeepers and threatening clinics. Let them miss the gunslinger methodically dismantling their operation from the shadows. Thomas leaves Jack with Deputy Chen, then drives toward the clinic. He can already hear vehicles converging there, the butcher and his enforcers ready to make examples. They'll expect to find a scared doctor, an empty clinic, an easy target. Instead, they're about to learn why some targets aren't as defenseless as they appear. Why some hunters prefer to be underestimated. The gunslinger is done gathering intelligence. Time to start the real operation. The clinic's parking lot fills with vehicles as Thomas pulls up, counting heads through his peripheral vision. The Butcher and Viper flank the entrance, while Snake and two other enforcers circle the building. Another gang member watches the street, hand resting on his concealed weapon. Their positioning is aggressive but predictable. Standard intimidation. Tactics lacking real tactical awareness. Inside, Maria faces down Cruz and two contractors in tactical gear. Her voice carries through the open door, steady despite the pressure. "I don't care about your permits. This is my clinic, and you don't dictate medical policy here." "Actually," Cruz's tone suggests barely controlled rage, "we do, unless you want the State Medical Board to receive some concerning documentation about prescription irregularities." Thomas enters like any concerned citizen would, projecting nervousness and uncertainty. But his mind maps exit routes, catalogues weapons, notes the contractor's equipment, high-end tactical gear, military-grade communications, the kind of hardware that requires special connections. "What's happening?" he asks, letting fear color his voice. "Maria, are you all right?" "Mr. McKenna." Cruz turns, frustration evident. "Seems everyone's making poor choices today. First the store, now the clinic." He gestures to the contractors. "These gentlemen need to establish a private medical facility. Dr. Ramirez is being unreasonable about sharing space." The lead contractor steps forward, hand drifting toward his concealed holster. "Sir, this is a private matter. I suggest you leave." The Butcher moves to herd Thomas toward the door, but Thomas notes his sloppy approach, his poor balance, the 3 seconds it would take him to draw his weapon. Amateur mistakes that will matter very soon. A phone rings. The contractor answers, face darkening. "What do you mean another truck is down? That's 6 mechanical failures in 3 hours? Fix it." He turns to Cruz. "Buyers are getting nervous. Need this corridor secured now." "Then let's solve both problems." Cruz nods to the Butcher and Viper. "Show Dr. Ramirez what happens to uncooperative business owners. Make it messy enough to motivate Mr. McKenna's upcoming property decision." The enforcers advance, but Thomas is already moving. His stumble appears clumsy, but puts him inside the Butcher's strike range. The enforcer's swing misses as Thomas seemingly trips into Viper, his apparent fall masking the precise pressure point strike that leaves the man gasping. Snake reaches for his weapon but finds empty air, his holster mysteriously unfastened during the confusion. The gun slides across the floor as chaos erupts, everyone moving at once, but only one person truly controlling the space. Thomas maintains his frightened act, even as he systematically dismantles the attack. A medical cart tips, appearing to catch him as he falls, but sending precision-aimed surgical instruments into the Butcher's path. He stumbles again, somehow tangling Snake's feet as he charges, sending him crashing into his own allies. The contractors recognize the technique even if they don't spot its source. Professional defensive tactics disguised as civilian clumsiness. Their hands move toward weapons, but Deputy Chen's sudden arrival freezes everyone. "Everything all right here?" Lisa asks, hand resting meaningfully on her sidearm. Her patrol car blocks the exit, dash camera recording. Cruz forces a smile. "Just a misunderstanding. Our friends were leaving." He glares at Maria. "We'll continue this discussion later." But Thomas catches his whispered command to the contractors. "Full response tonight. Make examples." The vehicles depart, their intimidation play ruined. But Thomas notes their departure routes, their rally points, the way they split up to cover different sectors. Their planned operation is clearly larger than simple real estate fraud. "They'll be back," Maria says once they're gone. "Probably, with more muscle." "Count on it." Thomas helps clean up the clinic, positioning certain items for quick access later. "That's why we'll be ready." "Your security cameras working?" "Crashed this morning, along with half their vehicles." Maria's smile holds grim understanding. Amazing how much can go wrong when certain people push too hard. Thomas's phone vibrates. Encrypted message from his Marshal Service contact. Buyers identified. International. Arms dealers. Heavy weapons deal scheduled tonight. Through the window, he spots Sheriff Rivera's patrol car meeting Cruz's crew behind Devil's Canyon. More pieces falling into place, the real operation about to begin. "Lisa," he turns to the deputy, "about those traffic cameras you installed last week, any interesting patterns?" Multiple vehicles converging tonight, different approach routes, all heading south. Lisa's expression suggests she's guessed some of Thomas's background. Might need extra patrols in certain areas. Shame if someone interfered with their schedule. Thomas nods, mind already planning next moves. Red Scorpion thought they were attacking a simple clinic, never realizing they'd revealed vital operational details. "Maria," he says quietly, "remember that contingency plan we discussed? Time to implement all of it." His phone buzzes again. Sarah reporting increased activity at the ranch border. Cruz's crew returning in force, probably planning to make examples of uncooperative landowners. Perfect. Let them come. Let them think their intimidation is working. Let them miss the real operation until it's too late. The Gunslinger has their measure now. The real hunting is about to begin. The town of Shadow Creek transforms as sunset approaches. Shops close early, windows shutter, streets empty. Red Scorpion vehicles patrol in formation, their presence no longer pretending to be casual. The Butcher leads a team down Main Street, while Viper and Snake systematically visit businesses, delivering final warnings. Thomas watches from Jack's store, noting patrol patterns. 3 vehicles at the south end, 2 north, others circling intermittently. Professional coverage suggesting military consultation, but with obvious blind spots they don't realize exist. "They hit the feed store an hour ago," Jack whispers, hands shaking as he loads his old shotgun. "Broke Bill Thompson's arm when he tried to argue. Sheriff Rivera just watched through the window." Through the store's security cameras, Thomas spots unfamiliar vehicles arriving. Expensive SUVs with diplomatic plates. Men in suits that don't quite hide shoulder holsters. The buyers Cruz has been waiting for. "Lisa's got eyes on them," Jack continues, showing Thomas his phone. Deputy Chen's message is clear. 3 more vehicles at Devil's Canyon. Heavy security, military-grade weapons visible. Thomas's satellite. Phone vibrates. Sarah's coded warning. More vehicles approaching the ranch, Snake leading an aggressive show of force. Exactly as expected, their pressure increasing as the weapons deal approaches. "Time to go," Thomas tells Jack. "Remember the plan. When they come, give them what they expect." Outside, he notes the Butcher, speaking urgently with one of the contractors, their body language suggesting growing tension. Something's wrong with their carefully planned operation. Equipment failures, mechanical problems, communication issues. Almost like someone systematically disrupting their infrastructure. His phone buzzes again, encrypted message from Marshal Service contacts. "Buyers confirmed, Serbian arms dealers, heavy hardware deal scheduled 2200 hours. Sheriff Rivera's patrol car rolls past, escorting another SUV. Through tinted windows, Thomas spots Cruz meeting with men whose bearing screams Special Forces background. More layers of the operation revealed. "Tom!" Maria's voice carries controlled urgency as she exits her clinic. They're moving something into the old mine tunnels, multiple trucks, armed guards. The tunnels. Of course, Thomas's mind maps. The old mining network beneath the valley, perfect for moving illegal cargo, avoiding main roads. He'd studied those tunnels for months, knowing they'd be crucial. A commotion erupts at the feed store, the Butcher and Snake making examples of another uncooperative owner. But Thomas notes how their violence seems forced, almost desperate. They're behind schedule, buyers getting nervous, pressure building. His phone records it all. Lisa's message confirms. Got everything on camera. Rivera involved directly now. More vehicles roar past, heading south. Thomas spots military-grade cases poorly concealed under tarps. sloppy. They're rushing now, making mistakes, the gunslingers' strategic disruption pushing them toward inevitable errors. Multiple vehicles approaching from county line. Lisa's next message reports heavy security. Looks like the main shipment starting. Thomas drives toward his ranch, noting increased activity. Red Scorpion members everywhere, their previous attempts at subtlety abandoned. They think they're showing force. Actually, they're revealing their entire operational structure. Sarah meets him at the gate. Found something in the old barn. Records. These tunnels, they don't just run under our property. They connect to the old railroad line, come up right behind Devil's Canyon. The tunnel entrance is hidden behind decades of debris, but the airflow suggests recent use. Thomas's flashlight reveals fresh tire tracks, scuff marks from heavy crates. They've been using these passages, never realizing who else knows about them. His military-grade scope shows increased activity at Devil's Canyon. Trucks arriving, armed contractors establishing perimeter security, crews coordinating with the weapons buyers, everything proceeding according to their plan and according to his. They're getting ready, Sarah observes, watching vehicles gather at their property line. Probably hit us after dark. Make an example. Yes. Thomas checks his watch, calculating timing. They'll want to clear any resistance before the main shipment moves, standard tactical protocol. He allows himself a small smile. Shame they don't know about the other tunnels, or the old railroad maintenance sheds, or certain equipment. Installed months ago, a message from Lisa. Rivera ordered all patrols away from South roads. Perfect. Let them think they control the situation. Let them focus on intimidating locals while missing the real operation happening right under them. Thomas's phone lights. Up. Time to coordinate with Marshal Service contacts. With Lisa, with Maria and Jack, everyone in position playing their roles. Red Scorpion thinks they're about to demonstrate their power. Instead, they're about to learn why some predators prefer to be underestimated. The real operation begins at sunset. The gunslinger is ready to show them exactly who they're dealing with. Through the deepening shadows, Thomas watches more of Cruz's vehicles arrive, establishing what they think are tactical positions around his ranch. They believe they're preparing to break his resistance. Actually, they're moving exactly where he wants them, piece by piece, player by player, walking right into a trap months in the making. Sarah, he says quietly, checking his hidden equipment one final time, I think it's time we showed them why this piece of land never sold. Why no one's ever managed to take it by force. His wife nods, understanding the tone in his voice. The same tone that once made cartel leaders surrender at the mere sound of his approach. The time for hiding is over. The legend of Lightning Hand is about to be reborn. Night settles over the Harrison Ranch as Red Scorpion makes their move. Vehicles approach from multiple directions, their formation suggesting military guidance. The Butcher leads from the south, while Viper and Snake circle west. Two more enforcers cover the eastern approach, all converging with practiced coordination. Thomas watches through his scope, counting vehicles, 15 trucks, 3 SUVs carrying contractors, Cruz's vehicle leading. They think they're executing a show of force. Actually, they're riding into a carefully prepared trap. Main force approaching, he tells Sarah, who monitors their security feeds, right on schedule. Lisa's in position, she confirms. Maria's got the clinic ready. Jack reports the buyers are getting nervous, their timelines off. Headlights illuminate the ranch as vehicles surround the property. Cruz dismounts, contractors flanking him with professional precision. Their weapons remain concealed, keeping up appearances despite the obvious military hardware in their vehicles. Last chance, McKenna. Cruz's voice carries forced confidence. Fire sale prices end tonight, along with our patience. Thomas steps onto the porch, maintaining his frightened rancher demeanor, but he's already noted their tactical weaknesses. Poor coverage of the South Ridge, vehicles positioned without proper escape routes, communications relying on unsecured channels. "Mr. Cruz," he lets his voice shake slightly, "please, we just need more time to—" "Time's up." He gestures to the butcher and snake. "Show them what happens to uncooperative neighbors." The enforcers advance, but Thomas is already moving. His stumble appears clumsy, but places him exactly where he needs to be. Suddenly, floodlights burst from concealed positions, momentarily blinding the gang members. In the confusion, none of them notice certain vehicles experiencing mysterious mechanical failures. "What the hell?" Snake raises his hand against the glare, missing how Thomas's fearful retreat has separated their formation, created tactical gaps. Radio static bursts from the contractors' communications, their supposedly secure channels filling with interference. Coordination compromised. Cruz grabs his phone, face darkening as messages arrive. Problems with the weapons shipment, routes unexpectedly blocked. Surveillance cameras failing. "Sir," one contractor approaches urgently, "main convoy reporting issues. Alternative routes are... they're compromised. Someone knows our backup plans." Thomas watches Cruz's composure crack slightly. The operation is unraveling. Equipment failures, communication problems, blocked routes. Almost like someone with law enforcement experience has been systematically targeting their infrastructure. The butcher moves to grab Thomas, but finds himself strangely off balance, his combat training countered by moves he barely registers. Other gang members face similar problems. Weapons catching on holsters, trucks failing to start, tactical positions suddenly exposed. "Enough games." Cruz signals the contractors. "Clear the property, send a message." But Deputy Chen's arrival changes the dynamic. Her patrol car's dash camera records everything as she steps out, hand meaningfully near her weapon. Problem. "Here, folks. Just a property dispute." Cruz forces a smile. Behind him, contractors desperately try to hide military hardware in their vehicles. Lisa's radio crackles. "All units, multiple suspicious vehicles reported south of town. Heavy equipment, military-grade weapons observed." The contractors exchange worried looks. Their operational security is compromised, their timeline disrupted, their routes exposed. Professional operators recognizing when a situation has shifted against them. "Pull back," Cruz orders finally. "Regroup at waypoint 3. But even their retreat reveals operational details, rally points, communication protocols, chain of command. As vehicles roar away, Thomas spots a familiar vehicle approaching Devil's Canyon, Sheriff Rivera meeting with the weapons buyers. Their body language suggests growing tension. The deal delayed, security compromised, promises unfulfilled. "They'll be back," Sarah says quietly. "Probably with more force. Count on it." Thomas watches taillights disappear into darkness. But now we know their patterns, their protocols, their weaknesses. His phone lights up with messages. Lisa reporting vehicle movements, Maria confirming clinic preparations, Jack passing intel about buyer activities. Everyone playing their part in the gunslinger's carefully orchestrated operation. "Tom!" Sarah's voice carries growing understanding. "Those equipment failures, the blocked routes, the communication problems, that wasn't just luck, was it?" He allows himself a small smile. Amazing how many things can go wrong when someone knows what to look for, especially someone with certain training. Through his scope, he watches Red Scorpion regrouping at their fallback position, Cruz arguing with contractors, professionals, realizing their operation is compromised, buyers growing increasingly nervous. Perfect. Let them think tonight was just a show of force gone wrong. Let them miss how much intel they've revealed, how many weaknesses they've exposed. A gunslinger knows patience, knows how to turn opponents' strength against them. The real operation is just beginning, and Red Scorpion is about to learn why some hunters prefer to be underestimated. Through the ranch house window, Thomas watches more vehicles gathering in the distance. The arms dealers are mobilizing everything they have, desperation making them sloppy, exactly as planned. They're scared now, Sarah observes, making mistakes. Yes. Thomas checks his hidden equipment one final time. And scared men always return to what they know best: brute force, intimidation. They'll come at us hard now, throw everything they have. His phone buzzes with a message from Lisa. Federal task force standing by, just waiting for your signal. Thomas allows himself a grim smile. The pieces are all in place. Now it's time to spring the trap that's been months in the making. Dawn breaks over Shadow Creek as Thomas retrieves his hidden trail cameras. The memory cards contain 3 days of surveillance, documenting every vehicle passing through Devil's Canyon, every suspicious movement near the mine entrances. He works with practiced efficiency, leaving no trace of his presence. Years of tracking outlaws had taught him the value of patience and precision. Through his enhanced optics, he observes increased activity at the canyon's main entrance. The arms dealers have abandoned subtlety, moving military hardware openly now. Their desperation shows in their rushed movements, their sloppy operational security. A silver SUV arrives, and Thomas recognizes the Serbian buyers from his Marshal Service. Intelligence briefings. Their presence confirms the scale of tonight's planned transaction. His satellite phone vibrates. A message from Lisa. Found something in the old county records. These mining tunnels, they're part of a larger network. Some passages date back to Prohibition. Perfect for moving contraband. Thomas accesses the secure digital maps he'd been compiling for months. The tunnel system spans miles, connecting multiple properties recently acquired by Red Scorpion's shell companies. Not just random real estate fraud, they're securing an underground transport corridor. Sarah's voice comes through his encrypted radio. More vehicles at the ranch border. Different approach pattern this time. They're probing our defenses. Copy that, Thomas responds, noting how Cruz's men have modified their tactics after last night's confrontation. Keep monitoring. Let them think they're being clever. A dust cloud approaches from the south, Maria's truck moving at high speed. Through his scope, Thomas spots 2 Red Scorpion vehicles in pursuit. He's already moving as Maria's truck skids to a stop near his position. "Tom," she calls out, clutching a laptop. "You need to see this. Found it in one of the contractors' vehicles when they were threatening my staff. The computer contains shipping manifests, route plans, detailed schedules. But what catches Thomas's attention are the tunnel schematics. Professional military-grade surveys showing every passage, every junction, every potential choke point. These aren't just smuggling routes, he observes, recognizing tactical notations. In margins, they're planning something bigger, multiple shipments, heavy equipment, scheduled deliveries. His phone buzzes. Another message from Lisa. Sheriff Rivera just ordered all patrols away from Devil's Canyon tonight. Says it's a training exercise. Through his surveillance feed, Thomas watches more vehicles arrive at the canyon, modified. Trucks carrying sophisticated electronics, communications gear, thermal imaging equipment. The kind of hardware used for major military operations. They're setting up a permanent corridor, he tells Maria, using these tunnels to establish a regular weapons pipeline. The ranch sales, the clinic pressure, it's all about controlling access points. A burst of static from his radio, Jack's voice carrying urgency. "Tom, got those buyers on camera. They're inspecting something big in the main tunnel. Military crates, heavy security." Thomas accesses the feed from Jack's store cameras. The image quality is poor, but he can make out large containers being unloaded. The markings match patterns he'd seen during his Marshal Service days, specialized weapons, restricted military hardware. "Sarah," he radios, "check the north tunnel. Entrance, the one behind the old railroad shed." "Already on it," she responds. Fresh tire tracks, multiple vehicles. They're using it as a staging area. Perfect. They're expanding operations exactly where Thomas had anticipated, where he'd spent months preparing countermeasures. His phone vibrates. Encrypted message. From his Marshal Service contact. Intel confirmed. Serbian buyers connected to major arms trafficking network. Deal tonight involves prototype weapon systems. International implications. Through his surveillance network, Thomas observes crews coordinating with the contractors, their movements suggesting growing tension. The buyers are impatient, their schedule disrupted by mysterious equipment failures and blocked routes. Tom. Maria's voice carries professional concern. These manifests, some of this equipment, it's not just weapons. Medical supplies, surgical gear, trauma kits, they're setting up for casualties. Makes sense, Thomas responds, mind-mapping implications. A permanent smuggling corridor means eventual confrontations. They need medical support, way to handle. Injuries, quietly. His radio crackles, Lisa reporting multiple vehicles moving south, heavy trucks, armed escorts. They're consolidating everything for tonight. Through his scope, Thomas watches the operation taking shape. Cruz's men establishing security perimeters, contractors positioning surveillance equipment, buyers inspecting their merchandise. They think they're preparing for a simple weapons deal. Instead, they're walking into a trap decades in the making. Every tunnel mapped, every route monitored, every escape path prepared for closure. The gunslinger had spent months studying this underground maze, learning its secrets, preparing for this moment. "Sarah," he radios, watching more vehicles gather. "At Devil's Canyon, remember what I told you about why I chose this ranch? About the strategic value of these old tunnels?" "Yes," she responds, understanding in her voice. "You said some ground is worth defending, worth using as a trap." Thomas allows himself a grim smile as Cruz's convoy approaches their position. The arms dealers think they're about to conduct a simple transaction. Instead, they're about to learn why a legendary marshal chose this particular piece of land, why some hunters prefer to fight on ground they've prepared. The real operation is about to begin. The underground labyrinth is about to become a hunting ground, and a gunslinger is ready to show them exactly why he earned his reputation. The afternoon sun casts harsh shadows across Shadow Creek as the town transforms into a battlefield. Thomas observes from his concealed position as Cruz's operation shifts into high gear. Military trucks move openly now, their cargo barely concealed. The arms dealers have abandoned pretense, their desperation evident in their rushed preparations. Through his surveillance network, Thomas watches the Serbian buyers inspect their merchandise in the main tunnel. Their expressions show growing impatience, their gestures becoming more animated as they argue with Cruz about delays and security concerns. The constant equipment failures and mysterious route blockages have made them nervous. "Movement at the north entrance," Sarah reports through their secure channel. 4 more vehicles, heavy weapons visible. They're bringing in professional security teams. Thomas adjusts his scope, studying the new arrivals. Their bearing and equipment confirm his suspicions, ex-military contractors, probably former special forces. The kind of operators who sell their skills to the highest bidder without asking questions. His satellite phone vibrates. A message from Lisa. "Sheriff Rivera mobilizing all deputies. Ordered us to maintain perimeter around Devil's Canyon. No one in or out without authorization." "They're trying to lock down the area," Thomas tells Sarah, "creating a secure corridor for tonight's transaction." Through his enhanced optics, he observes the butcher coordinating with the contractors, their tactical formations suggesting imminent action. They're preparing to clear the area of potential witnesses, eliminate any resistance before the main shipment moves. Jack's voice comes through the radio. "Tom, got eyes on something concerning. They're moving serious hardware into the old Thompson mine shaft. Military crates, electronic equipment, looks like some kind of command center. Thomas accesses the feed from Jack's hidden cameras. The image shows contractors installing sophisticated communications gear, establishing a forward operating base underground. They're not just planning a single transaction, they're creating permanent infrastructure. His phone buzzes again. Encrypted Marshal Service intelligence. Buyers confirmed connections to international terror networks. Hardware includes prototype targeting systems, classified military technology. Priority response authorized. Maria, Thomas radios the clinic. Status report? Medical supplies staged as discussed, she responds. But Tom, these contractors, their gear, their protocols, this isn't typical security work. They're equipped for serious combat operations. Thomas watches through his scope as more vehicles arrive at Devil's Canyon. Cruz meets with the security teams, their discussion heated. The buyers want additional guarantees, demanding proof their route is secure before moving the main shipment. Sarah, he says quietly, time to implement Protocol Alpha. Let's show, and them why controlling these tunnels isn't as simple as they think. Suddenly, emergency bulkheads activate in key tunnel sections. Heavy steel doors sliding into place, splitting Cruz's forces into isolated groups. Confusion erupts as teams find themselves cut off, their carefully planned routes suddenly blocked. What the hell? The butcher's voice carries through intercepted radio traffic. The tunnel systems are moving on their own. We're locked out of multiple sections. Sir, a contractor reports to Cruz, communications compromised. Someone's flooding our secure channels with interference. We're losing coordination between teams. Thomas allows himself a grim smile as his preparations take effect. Months of planning, of installing hidden equipment, of preparing this underground labyrinth for exactly this moment. His phone lights up with updates from his allies. Lisa reporting police movements, Maria confirming medical preparations, Jack tracking buyer activities, everyone playing their role in the carefully orchestrated operation. Through surveillance feeds, Thomas watches panic spread through Cruz's organization. The professional contractors recognize the implications. Someone, with serious resources, has compromised their operation, turned their underground fortress into a trap. Multiple vehicles mobilizing, Sarah reports. They're sending teams to check all tunnel entrances, looking for whoever's controlling the systems. Let them look, Thomas responds, checking his equipment one final time. They won't find anything. Not until it's too late. The afternoon heat intensifies as more vehicles arrive at Devil's Canyon. Cruz's entire organization deploying in force, trying to secure their operation through sheer manpower. But they don't understand what they're really facing. Tom, Sarah's voice carries quiet concern, that storage unit we opened, the special equipment, are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. Thomas watches through his scope as the arms dealers grow increasingly agitated. Their carefully planned operation is unraveling, and they don't even realize the real strike hasn't begun. I'm sure, he responds, seeing the butcher organize assault teams to breach the sealed tunnel sections. They think controlling this land is about force, about intimidation. Time to teach them why some territory stays unconquered, why some reputations are earned in blood. His phone vibrates one final time. Marshal Service confirmation. Federal key. Response teams in position, awaiting your signal. Perfect. Every piece in place, every player positioned exactly where they need to be. The arms dealers think they're preparing for a major transaction. Instead, they're about to learn why crossing a legendary gunslinger was their final mistake. The real operation is about to begin, and Shadow Creek is about to become the battleground where legends are reborn. The sun sinks toward the horizon as Thomas initiates his counteroffensive. Through his surveillance network, he watches Cruz's organization fracture under pressure. The sealed tunnel sections have split their forces, created confusion, turned their underground fortress into a maze of isolated compartments. Status report, he radios to his allies, each positioned strategically throughout Shadow Creek. Medical team standing by, Maria responds from the clinic. Already treated 3 of their men. They're talking, Tom, scared. Something about specialized weapons, military prototypes. Multiple vehicles at the north entrance, Sarah adds. But they're disorganized. The contractors are arguing with Cruz's men about tactical priorities. Through his enhanced optics, Thomas observes the arms dealers' growing frustration. The Serbian buyers pace near their vehicles, gesturing angrily at Cruz. Their carefully planned transaction is falling apart, security compromised, timeline disrupted. Sir, the butcher's voice carries through intercepted radio traffic. We've lost contact with teams 3 and 4, the tunnel systems. Something's happening down there. Thomas allows himself a grim smile as his preparations take effect. In the sealed tunnel sections, hidden speakers activate, broadcasting carefully selected sounds. Footsteps, whispered conversations, equipment movements. The trapped men fire at shadows, waste ammunition, their professional discipline crumbling. His phone buzzes, encrypted message from Lisa. Sheriff Rivera mobilizing everything, called in favors from neighboring counties. But some deputies are asking questions about his orders. Perfect! The corruption is becoming obvious, creating division within law enforcement ranks, another piece of the plan falling into place. Through surveillance feeds, Thomas watches panic spread through the underground network. Teams that breached the sealed sections report mysterious equipment failures, inexplicable accidents, men disappearing in the darkness, the legend of Lightning Hand beginning to resurface. They're pulling back, Jack reports from his observation post. Coming up from the tunnels. Fast, scared, never seen professional contractors move like that. Thomas accesses the store's cameras. The image shows hardened mercenaries emerging from tunnel entrances, their tactical gear covered in dust, weapons, held with white-knuckled grips. Something down there has shaken their confidence, turned experienced operators into frightened men. Sir, a contractor reports to Cruz, voice shaking, we're getting strange readings on our thermal imaging. Movement. Patterns that don't make sense. And the sound echoes. It's like someone's hunting us down there. The afternoon heat shimmers as Cruz confronts the Serbian buyers. Their argument carries across the surveillance network. Accusations about security failures, demands for explanations, threats about consequences of delayed delivery. Tom, Sarah's voice holds careful concern. That special equipment we activated, the psychological warfare systems, it's working better than expected. These men, they're starting to break. Through his scope, Thomas watches the organization's discipline collapse. The professional contractors recognize the signs of a sophisticated operation, begin questioning their commitment. Cruz's gang, members already scared by the tunnel incidents, grow increasingly paranoid. His satellite phone vibrates. Marshal Service update. Federal response teams monitoring situation. Psychological impact exceeding projections. Target organization showing significant strain. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south, Lisa reports through their secure channel. Looks like they're bringing in additional security teams. Heavy weapons visible. Thomas checks his watch, calculating timing. Everything proceeding according to plan. The arms dealers think bringing in more men will solve their problems, never realizing they're just adding more pieces to a trap decades in the making. Tom, Maria's voice carries professional assessment. These men coming into my clinic, they're experiencing severe psychological trauma. Whatever's happening in those tunnels, it's breaking them. Good. Thomas watches through his surveillance. Network as Cruz attempts to rally his forces. Fear makes men sloppy, makes them reveal things. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows as more vehicles arrive at Devil's Canyon. The arms dealers deploy everything they have, trying to secure their operation through overwhelming force. But Thomas sees their tactical mistakes, their rushed deployments, their poorly coordinated responses. "Sarah," he radios, noting increased movement near the ranch, "time to implement Phase 2. Show them why controlling this land requires more than just men with guns." Suddenly, hidden speakers throughout the tunnel network activate. The sound of spurs on stone echoes through underground passages, growing closer, fading away, approaching again from impossible directions. The whispered legend of Lightning Hand spreads through frightened men, stories of a gunslinger who could appear from nowhere, strike without warning, vanish into shadows. "Sir," the butcher reports to Cruz, panic evident in his voice, "we've got men refusing to go back into the tunnels. They're saying something's down there, hunting them." Thomas allows himself a cold smile, as his reputation does. It's work. In his Marshal Service days, psychological warfare had been as important as gunfighting skill. Now those same techniques turn hardened criminals into frightened prey. His phone lights up with updates from his network. Lisa reporting police movements, Maria tracking psychological casualties, Jack observing organizational collapse, everyone playing their part in the legend's resurrection. The real operation is entering its final phase. The arms dealers thought they could take this land through force and intimidation. Instead, they're about to learn why some territories remain unconquered, why some legends never die. The hunt is accelerating, and Shadow Creek is about to witness the rebirth of Lightning Hand. Evening shadows lengthen across Devil's Canyon as the international scope of the operation becomes clear. Through his surveillance network, Thomas watches a new convoy arrive. Diplomatic vehicles with false credentials, professional security teams with military-grade equipment. The Serbian buyers aren't just arms dealers. They're representatives of something much larger. His satellite phone vibrates. Encrypted intelligence from Marshal Service contacts. Buyers identified as members of international weapons cartel, connected to terrorist organizations across 3 continents. Prototype weapons targeted for distribution to conflict zones. Through his enhanced optics, Thomas observes a tense meeting between Cruz and the cartel representatives. The buyer's security chief gestures angrily at the tunnel entrances, where frightened men continue to emerge from the underground network. "These tactical failures are unacceptable," the chief's voice carries through Thomas's directional microphones. "Our organization invested heavily in this corridor. The equipment alone costs millions. If you cannot secure simple transportation routes—" "We're handling it," Cruz responds, but uncertainty edges his voice. "Bringing in additional teams, sweeping the tunnels section by section." Sarah's voice comes through the secure channel. "More vehicles at the ranch border, different approach pattern. They're adapting their tactics, but getting sloppy, making mistakes." Thomas accesses the feed from hidden cameras near the property line. The new security teams move with professional precision, but their formation shows gaps, weaknesses created by fear, by the growing legend of what hunts them in the darkness. "Tom," Lisa reports through encrypted radio, "got something you need to see. Found these in Rivera's office while he was coordinating with Cruz." The documents she transmits reveal the true scale of corruption. Bank records showing payments to officials across 3 states. Shipping manifests detailing weapons movements through apparently legitimate businesses. A network of bribed authorities ensuring smooth operation of the smuggling corridor. His phone buzzes again. Maria updating from the clinic. More men coming, in with trauma symptoms. They're talking about sounds in the tunnels, impossible movements, a figure that appears and vanishes. The legend is spreading. Thomas allows himself a grim smile. Fear does his work for him, turning hardened criminals against each other, making professionals question their commitment. Through surveillance feeds, he watches the organization fracture under pressure. "Sir," the butcher reports to Cruz, "lost. Contact with 2 more teams in Section C, the men. They're saying they saw him, the gunslinger, lightning hand." "Ghosts and fairy tales," Cruz snaps. But Thomas notes how his hand trembles slightly as he reaches for his radio. "Get those teams back in the tunnels. The shipment moves tonight, no matter what." Multiple vehicles approaching from the county line. Jack's voice carries quiet urgency. Different configuration than before. These look like heavy transport, military grade. Thomas adjusts his scope, studying the new arrivals. Armored trucks designed for weapons transport, accompanied by professional security teams. The cartel is mobilizing its main shipment, trying to force completion of the deal despite the security breaches. "Your operation is compromised," the Serbian buyer's security chief tells Cruz bluntly. "Our sources report federal attention. Unusual communication patterns. Someone has exposed the corridor." Through his surveillance network, Thomas watches the impact of these words ripple through the organization. The professional contractors exchange knowing looks, recognizing the signs of a sophisticated counter-operation. Cruz's men grow increasingly nervous, realizing they're caught between federal authorities and angry international arms dealers. "Tom," Sarah radios from her observation post, "they're pulling everything back to Devil's Canyon, consolidating forces, looking like they're preparing for something big." "Let them gather," Thomas responds, checking his equipment one final time. Everything proceeding according to plan. His satellite phone lights up with Marshal Service confirmation. "Federal response teams in position. International task force. Coordinating with local authorities. Waiting for your signal." Through hidden cameras, Thomas observes the arms dealers' growing desperation. The Serbian buyers pace nervously, checking phones, receiving updates about federal movements. The contractors establish defensive positions, preparing for potential law enforcement response. "Sir," a security team leader approaches Cruz. "We've got problems, multiple problems. The tunnel systems aren't just compromised, they're working against us. Security cameras failing, communications disrupted, men vanishing in supposedly sealed sections." "Get it under control," Cruz demands, but his authority rings hollow. "Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, this shipment moves tonight." Thomas watches through his scope as more vehicles arrive, the arms dealers throwing resources at a problem they don't understand. They think overwhelming force will solve their security issues, never realizing they're dealing with something their weapons can't touch. A legend reborn, a hunter who knows every shadow of this territory. "All teams check in," he radios to his allies. "Confirm positions." The responses come quickly. Lisa monitoring police movements, Maria tracking psychological casualties, Jack observing force deployments, Sarah watching the ranch perimeter. Everyone in position, playing their part in the operation's final phase. The real confrontation approaches. The arms dealers thought they were executing a simple weapons transaction. Instead, they're about to learn why some legends survive. Why the name Lightning Hand still makes hardened men wake screaming in the night. The hunt reaches its climax, and Shadow Creek will never be the same. Night descends on Shadow Creek as Thomas initiates the operation's decisive phase. Through his surveillance network, he watches the arms dealers consolidate their forces around Devil's Canyon. Their security teams establish defensive positions, but fear makes them sloppy. Every shadow holds potential threats. Every unexplained sound draws nervous attention. All sectors reporting increased activity, Sarah updates through their secure channel. They're moving the main shipment into position. Heavy weapons, military prototypes, experimental targeting systems. Thomas adjusts his enhanced optics, studying the convoy assembling near the canyon's main entrance. Armored trucks carry cargo worth millions on the international black market. Professional security teams patrol the perimeter, but their formations show gaps, weaknesses created by growing paranoia. These men are breaking, Maria reports from the clinic. More contractors coming in with acute stress responses. They're convinced something's hunting them in the tunnels. The legend of Lightning Hand has them terrified. Through intercepted radio traffic, Thomas monitors the organization's deteriorating cohesion. The Serbian buyers demand immediate action, threatening consequences for further delays. Cruz's authority crumbles as his men refuse orders to enter certain tunnel sections. "Sir," the butcher's voice carries barely controlled panic. "Team 4 just went dark, complete communication blackout, and the sounds, they're getting closer." Thomas allows himself a cold smile as his psychological warfare takes effect. In the sealed tunnel sections, hidden speakers play carefully selected audio. The rhythmic sound of spurs on stone, whispered conversations that seem to come from nowhere. The distinctive click of a revolver being cocked. His satellite phone vibrates, encrypted message from Lisa. Sheriff Rivera mobilizing full response. But half his deputies are refusing orders. They've seen the evidence of corruption, choosing sides. Perfect. The law enforcement ranks divide exactly as planned, corrupted officials exposed, honest deputies aligning with federal authorities waiting to move in. Through surveillance feeds, Thomas observes the arms dealers' mounting desperation. The Serbian buyer's security chief argues with Cruz, professional assessment cutting through false confidence. "Your operation is compromised beyond recovery," the chief states flatly. "Someone with military experience has targeted your infrastructure, turned your secure corridor into a killing ground." "We're bringing in everything we have," Cruz responds, but his voice lacks conviction. Additional teams, heavy weapons, full tactical response. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Jack reports through encrypted radio, but different from their usual pattern. These look like extraction teams. Thomas studies the new arrivals through his scope. The vehicles and equipment confirm his suspicion. The international cartel is preparing contingency plans, ready to eliminate loose ends if the operation fails completely. "Tom," Sarah's voice carries quiet warning, "they're changing formation, looking like they're preparing for a major push, trying to force completion of the weapons transfer." "Good," Thomas responds, checking his equipment one final time. "Let them commit everything, makes the trap more effective." His phone lights up with updates from his network. Lisa reporting police movements, Maria tracking psychological casualties, Jack observing force deployments. Every piece in position for the final phase. Through hidden cameras, Thomas watches the arms dealer's operation reach its breaking point. The Serbian buyers pace nervously, receiving updates about federal attention. The contractors establish hasty defensive positions, preparing for potential law enforcement response. "Sir," a security team leader approaches Cruz, "we've got critical failures across all sectors. The tunnel systems are completely compromised. We're losing teams faster than we can replace them." "I don't care what it takes," Cruz snaps, desperation evident. "Get those tunnels cleared. The shipment moves tonight or our partners will—" His words cut off as hidden speakers activate throughout the underground network. The sound of steady footsteps echoes through dark passages, approaching from multiple directions. The whispered legend of Lightning Hand spreads through frightened men, tales of a lawman whose speed and accuracy made him more ghost than human. "These aren't just stories," the butcher tells his increasingly terrified men. "My father ran with border gangs 20 years ago, said he saw Lightning Hand take down 12 men in seconds, said the marshal moved like smoke, struck like thunder." Thomas allows himself a grim smile as his reputation does its work. Fear accomplishes what bullets cannot. turning hardened criminals into panicked prey, making professional operators question their mission. His satellite phone vibrates. Marshal Service confirmation, federal response teams in final position. International task force coordinating with local authorities, awaiting your signal. Through surveillance feeds, Thomas observes the operation's imminent collapse. The Serbian buyers argue about extraction options. The contractors calculate escape routes. Cruz's men eye the darkness with growing terror. All units check in. He radios to his allies. Confirm readiness. The responses come rapidly, each team member reporting position, each part of the plan ready for execution. The trap is set, the legend reborn, the real operation about to begin. The arms dealers thought they could take this land through force and intimidation. Instead, they're about to learn why some territories remain unconquered, why some reputations are written in blood and whispered in fear. The hunt reaches its zenith, and Shadow Creek will witness the return of Lightning Hand. The operation's full scope emerges as darkness settles over Devil's Canyon. Through his surveillance network, Thomas observes the arrival of a sleek black SUV. A man in an expensive suit emerges. Anthony Reynolds, senior advisor to the governor's office. His presence confirms the corruption reaches into the highest levels of state government. "You promised this corridor would be secure," Reynolds berates Cruz, his polished demeanor cracking under pressure. "Do you understand what's at stake? The connections that could be exposed?" Thomas's satellite phone vibrates, encrypted intelligence. From his Marshal Service contacts, Reynolds confirmed link to international arms cartel. Evidence suggests systematic corruption of state officials. Federal task force preparing widespread arrests. Through his enhanced optics, Thomas studies the gathering of power brokers. The Serbian buyers confer urgently with their security teams, while Reynolds argues with Cruz about containment protocols. Their carefully constructed network of corruption begins to unravel. "Tom," Lisa's voice carries controlled urgency through secure channels. "Just intercepted communications between Rivera and state officials. They're mobilizing everything. Corrupt deputies, private security, even military contractors with cartel connections." "Send me the data," Thomas responds, already calculating implications. The evidence Lisa transmits reveals the true magnitude of the conspiracy. Weapons trafficking routes protected by corrupted law enforcement. International arms deals facilitated by compromised officials. A sophisticated network reaching from Shadow Creek to state capitals. Sarah's voice comes through their encrypted radio. Multiple vehicles approaching from all directions. They're not just securing the canyon anymore. This looks like a full military operation. Thomas accesses feeds from his hidden cameras. Professional tactical teams deploy with precision, establishing overlapping fields of fire. But their movements betray growing uncertainty. Too many unexplained events, too many disappeared teams, too much evidence that they face something beyond their experience. "Sir," the butcher reports to Cruz, "we've lost contact with all teams in the lower tunnels. Complete communications blackout. And the sounds, they're everywhere now." Through surveillance feeds, Thomas watches fear spread through the organization. The professional contractors recognize patterns of a sophisticated counter-operation, while Cruz's men succumb to growing terror about what hunts them in the darkness. "This is beyond containment," Reynolds snaps at Cruz. "Your operation is compromised. Our partners are demanding immediate action, or they'll implement cleanup protocols." Thomas allows himself a grim smile at these words. He's seen cleanup protocols before. The elimination of loose ends, the burial of evidence, the disappearance of anyone who might expose the truth. His phone buzzes with an update from Maria. "More contractors brought in for treatment. They're breaking, Tom. Even the professionals are scared. Something about the way you're hunting them. It's destroying their morale." Perfect. Fear accomplishes what force cannot, turning hardened operators into frightened prey, making corrupt officials reveal their connections, exposing the entire criminal enterprise. "Tom," Jack reports through encrypted channels, "got eyes on something big. They're moving what looks like prototype weapons into the main tunnel, military hardware I've never seen before." Thomas studies the feed from Jack's cameras. The crates being unloaded bear classified markings, experimental targeting systems, next-generation combat technology, weapons that shouldn't exist outside of government labs. "This goes higher than we thought," Lisa adds, transmitting new intelligence. "Found documents in Rivera's office linking the operation to defense contractors, foreign military interests, even intelligence agencies." Léticule. Through his scope, Thomas observes the growing chaos at Devil's Canyon. Reynolds argues frantically on his phone while the Serbian buyers prepare contingency plans. The professional contractors establish defensive positions, but their tactics show desperation. "Sir," a security team leader addresses crews, "we have critical security breaches across all sectors. Someone's systematically dismantling our entire operation, and these incidents in the tunnels, they're not random. We're being hunted." Thomas's satellite phone vibrates. Marshal Service confirmation. Federal task force documenting all connections. International authorities preparing coordinated response. Evidence indicates corruption, network spanning multiple agencies. The pieces fall into place as Thomas watches through his surveillance network. The weapons operation in Shadow Creek connects to a larger conspiracy. International arms dealers working with corrupt officials, state authorities protecting criminal enterprises, a sophisticated network about to be exposed. "All units validate. Positions," he radios to his allies. "Prepare for final phase." The responses come quickly, each team member confirming readiness, each part of the plan in place. The trap is set, the evidence secured, the entire criminal enterprise about to face justice. Reynolds and his corrupt officials thought they could hide their operation in a quiet border town. Instead, they're about to learn why some legends endure, why the name Lightning Hand still commands respect in halls of power. The hunt reaches its apex, and Shadow Creek becomes ground zero for the exposure of a conspiracy that will shake the foundations of state government. The final preparations unfold as midnight approaches Devil's Canyon. Thomas observes through his surveillance network as Reynolds coordinates with state officials, their encrypted communications revealing the desperate mobilization of every corrupt resource at their disposal. Emergency orders dispatch compromised law enforcement units from 3 counties, while private security contractors arrive in unmarked vehicles. "Tom," Sarah's voice carries measured urgency through their secure channel. "Just intercepted communications between Reynolds and his superiors. They're not just trying to protect the weapons operation anymore. They're implementing what they call Protocol Omega, complete erasure of evidence and elimination of witnesses." Through his enhanced optics, Thomas studies the gathering force. At the canyon's main entrance, professional tactical teams establish interlocking fields of fire while armored vehicles move into defensive positions. Their deployment suggests military-grade training, but fear makes their formation sloppy, creates exploitable gaps. His satellite phone vibrates with an encrypted update from Lisa. State police special response teams mobilizing, but half there. Commanders are refusing corrupt orders. The evidence we've gathered about official corruption has created a schism in law enforcement ranks. "Perfect," Thomas responds, checking his specialized equipment one final time. "Let them divide themselves. Makes it easier to identify who stands for justice and who's sold their badge." Through surveillance feeds, he watches the arms dealers grow increasingly desperate. The Serbian buyers argue with their security teams about extraction protocols, while Cruz attempts to maintain control of his fracturing organization. The professional contractors exchange knowing looks, recognizing the signs of an operation about to implode. "Sir," the butcher reports to crews, his voice shaking, "we've lost all communication with teams in the lower tunnels. The sounds, they're getting closer. The men are saying Lightning Hand is hunting them personally." Thomas allows himself a grim smile as his psychological warfare reaches its peak. In the sealed tunnel sections, his carefully prepared audio systems create an atmosphere of overwhelming dread. The measured sound of spurs on stone echoes from multiple directions, while hidden speakers carry whispered conversations about the legendary Marshal's approach. "More men coming in for treatment," Maria updates from the clinic. "Even the professional contractors are breaking. Something about the way you're dismantling their operation. It's not just fear anymore. They're losing faith in their own capabilities." Through his scope, Thomas observes Reynolds conferring urgently with the Serbian buyer's security chief. Their body language suggests growing conflict about tactical priorities. The arms dealers want to secure their weapons shipment, while the corrupt officials need to eliminate evidence of their involvement. "Tom," Jack's voice carries quiet intensity. "Through encrypted channels, got eyes on something concerning. They're moving some kind of specialized equipment into the main tunnel complex. Looks military, but nothing I've ever seen before." Thomas studies the feed from Jack's hidden cameras. The devices being installed bear classified markings: advanced surveillance systems, electronic warfare equipment, technology that speaks to governmental involvement far beyond local corruption. "This operation has higher connections than we thought," Lisa adds, transmitting new intelligence. "Found documentation linking it to classified military programs, black budget projects, things that shouldn't exist." His phone buzzes with confirmation. From Marshal Service contacts, Federal Task Force tracking all connections. Evidence indicates corruption reaching into highest levels of multiple agencies. International implications confirmed. Sarah's voice comes through their secure channel. "Final positions confirmed." Lisa's coordinating with honest law enforcement elements. Maria's medical teams are staged for casualty response. Jack's surveillance network is fully operational. Thomas performs last-minute checks on his specialized gear. Equipment accumulated during his years as Lightning Hand. Tools that help build his legendary reputation. Every piece maintained in perfect condition, waiting for this moment. Through his surveillance network, he watches the final pieces move into position. Reynolds orders his corrupt officers to establish a security perimeter, while the arms dealers prepare their weapons shipment for emergency transport. The professional contractors deploy additional teams into the tunnel network, trying to regain control of compromised sections. "Sir," a security team leader addresses crews, "we've lost access to critical tunnel sections. Someone's systematically isolating our forces, turning our own infrastructure against us. These aren't random attacks. This is a sophisticated operation, executed by someone with extensive tactical experience." Thomas allows himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Months of preparation, of gathering intelligence, of setting up specialized equipment throughout the underground network, all leading to this moment. "All units confirm final status," he radios to his allies. Each responds in sequence. Positions verified, equipment checked, responsibilities understood. The trap is fully prepared, the evidence secured, justice poised to strike. Reynolds and his corrupt empire thought they could hide their operation in Shadow Creek's quiet canyons. Instead, they're about to learn why some legends persist. Why the name Lightning Hand still commands respect and fear in equal measure. The final confrontation approaches, and Devil's Canyon is about to become the battleground where a legacy of justice is reborn. The operation enters its decisive phase, as Thomas initiates his coordinated strike against the arms dealers' organization. Through his surveillance network, he watches chaos erupt in Devil's Canyon as his carefully prepared traps activate simultaneously. Emergency bulkheads seal critical tunnel sections, splitting the security forces into isolated groups. Communications. Systems fail across their entire network, leaving teams cut off and disoriented. All sectors reporting complete disruption, Sarah confirms through their secure channel. Cruz's men are scattered throughout the tunnel system. The professional contractors are trying to maintain tactical cohesion, but they're losing coordination. Thomas observes through his enhanced optics as Reynolds attempts to regain control of the deteriorating situation. The corrupt officials' polished facade cracks as reports flood in, weapons missing from secure storage, evidence disappearing from protected locations, entire teams vanishing in the darkness of the underground network. His satellite phone vibrates with an encrypted update from Lisa. Federal task force moving into position. State police, special response teams aligned with our operation are securing outer perimeter. Corrupt units being isolated and contained. Through surveillance feeds, Thomas watches the arms dealers' organization fracture under pressure. The Serbian buyers' security teams abandon their defensive positions, falling back to protect their principles. The professional contractors realize they're caught in someone else's operation, their tactical expertise rendered ineffective by an unseen opponent. "Sir!" The butcher's voice carries raw fear through intercepted communications. "We've lost contact with all teams in Section C. The men, they're reporting impossible things, movement patterns that defy tactical logic, a figure that appears and vanishes like smoke." Thomas allows himself a moment of satisfaction as his reputation does its work. In the sealed tunnel sections, his sophisticated audio systems create an atmosphere of psychological warfare. The measured sound of his approach seems to come from everywhere at once, while hidden speakers carry the whispered legend of Lightning Hand. "Tom," Maria reports from her observation post, "the professional contractors are breaking formation. They're recognizing patterns from old case files, tactics that match your documented operations from the Marshal Service days. The legend is becoming real for them." Through his scope, Thomas observes Reynolds conferring urgently with Cruz near the main tunnel entrance. Their argument carries across the surveillance network. Accusations about security failures, demands for explanations, threats about consequences. Neither man realizes they're being systematically maneuvered into position. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Jack updates through encrypted channels, but different configuration than before. Looks like their extraction teams are deploying early. They're starting to realize the magnitude of what they're facing. Thomas studies the new arrivals through his tactical optics. The vehicles and equipment confirm his assessment. The international cartel is preparing to abandon their compromised operation, ready to eliminate loose ends and escape with whatever they can salvage. His phone buzzes with confirmation from Marshal Service contacts, federal response units in final attack positions, international task force coordinating with local authorities. Evidence of corruption being secured across multiple jurisdictions. Sarah's voice comes through their secure channel. They're making their final play, Tom, consolidating remaining forces around the weapons shipment, trying to force completion of the transfer before their entire operation collapses. Thomas activates the last phase of his preparatory measures. Throughout the tunnel network, hidden systems create an environment of overwhelming psychological pressure. Emergency lights fail in precise patterns, plunging sections into darkness only to illuminate them again at tactical moments. The sound of his approach echoes from multiple directions, making coordinated defense impossible. "Sir," a security team leader reports to Cruz, voice shaking with professional concern, "we've lost control of the entire underground infrastructure. Someone with extensive tactical experience has compromised every system. We're not just being attacked, we're being hunted." Through his surveillance network, Thomas watches the final pieces fall into place. Reynolds orders his corrupt officers to establish a defensive perimeter while the arms dealers attempt to secure their weapons shipment. The professional contractors deploy their remaining teams into the tunnel network, trying to regain control of compromised sections. All units confirm attack positions, he radios to his allies. Each responds in sequence. Lisa coordinating with federal authorities, Maria preparing for potential casualties, Jack maintaining surveillance coverage, Sarah monitoring escape routes. The trap is fully armed, the evidence secured, justice ready to strike. Reynolds and his criminal enterprise thought they could hide their operation in the quiet canyons of Shadow Creek. Instead, they're about to learn why the legend of Lightning Hand endures, why some reputations are written in blood and whispered in fear. The final confrontation begins, and Devil's Canyon becomes the battlefield where legends prove their worth. The final confrontation unfolds in Devil's Canyon as Thomas systematically dismantles the arms dealers' remaining defenses. Through his surveillance network, he observes their desperate attempts to maintain control. The Serbian buyers order their security teams to secure the weapons shipment, while Reynolds mobilizes every corrupt resource still under his influence. Their tactical formations show growing disorder, professional discipline crumbling under relentless psychological pressure. They're consolidating around the main tunnel entrance, Sarah reports through their secure channel. Cruz is trying to coordinate a defensive perimeter, but his men are breaking formation. The legend of Lightning Hand has them spooked beyond recovery. Thomas studies the situation through his enhanced optics. The professional contractors attempt to establish interlocking fields of fire, but their positioning reveals fatal flaws. Fear makes them cluster too closely, creating vulnerabilities that wouldn't exist if they were thinking clearly. Through the darkness, he watches Reynolds pace nervously while arguing on his satellite phone, his words carrying across the surveillance network. "I don't care what it takes," Reynolds snaps into his phone. "Get those state police units here, now. If this operation fails, if those weapons aren't secured, we're all facing federal charges." His voice carries the edge of desperation that Thomas has heard before in other operations where corrupt officials realized their empire was crumbling. The sound of gunfire erupts from the lower tunnels as another team encounters Thomas's sophisticated countermeasures. Hidden speakers project the measured sound of spurs on stone, approaching from multiple directions. Emergency lights fail in carefully timed sequences, leaving professional operators firing blindly at shadows. "Sir," the butcher reports to Cruz, his voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "Team 4 is gone. Complete communication blackout. The men are saying..." He's saying Lightning Hand is hunting them personally, taking them down one by one. Thomas allows himself a grim smile as his psychological warfare reaches its peak. Through surveillance feeds, he watches the organization's remaining discipline shatter. The Serbian buyer's security chief argues with Reynolds about extraction protocols while Cruz's men abandon their positions, refusing orders to enter certain tunnel sections. "Tom," Lisa's voice carries quiet urgency through encrypted channels. "Federal task force is in final position. State police special response teams aligned with us have contained the corrupt units, waiting for your signal." His satellite phone vibrates with confirmation from Marshal Service contacts. International authorities moving on cartel connections across 3 continents, evidence of corruption being secured at highest levels, ready for coordinated strike. Thomas observes through his tactical optics as more vehicles arrive at Devil's Canyon. The arms dealers deploy everything they have left, trying to protect their multi-million-dollar weapons shipment. Professional contractors establish hasty defensive positions, but their tactics show desperation rather than expertise. They're attempting a final push, Sarah reports, monitoring their radio traffic, planning to force the weapons through the tunnel network, using multiple decoy convoys as distraction. Cruz is mobilizing every remaining team. "Let them come," Thomas responds, checking his specialized equipment one last time. Everything's proceeding according to plan. Through his surveillance network, he watches the operation's final phase unfold. Reynolds orders his corrupt officers to secure escape routes, while the Serbian buyers prepare their weapons for emergency transport. The professional contractors deploy their remaining teams into the tunnel system, walking right into Thomas's carefully prepared trap. "Sir," a security team leader addresses Cruz with growing desperation, "we've lost access to all secondary exits. Someone's systematically sealed every escape route. The tunnel network. It's become a killing ground." Maria's voice comes through secure channels. More contractors brought in for treatment. Complete psychological breakdown. They're talking about a shadow that moves like smoke, a legend come to life. The name Lightning Hand spreads through their ranks like wildfire. Thomas activates the final elements of his counter-operation. Throughout the underground network, his sophisticated systems create an environment of overwhelming tactical pressure. Communications fail in precise patterns, leaving teams isolated. The sound of his approach seems to come from everywhere at once, while hidden speakers carry whispered stories of his legendary exploits. All units confirm final attack positions. He radios to his allies. Each responds in sequence. Lisa coordinating with federal authorities, Maria preparing medical response teams, Jack maintaining surveillance coverage, Sarah monitoring emergency exits. The trap is fully set, the evidence secured, justice poised to strike. Reynolds and his criminal enterprise thought they could take control of Shadow Creek through force and corruption. Instead, they're about to learn why some legends endure, why the mere mention of Lightning Hand, once made, hardened outlaws surrender rather than face his wrath. The final confrontation reaches its peak, and Devil's Canyon becomes the ground where a legacy of justice is enforced with lethal precision. The final confrontation erupts across Devil's Canyon as Thomas executes his masterfully orchestrated endgame. His surveillance network captures the chaos as the arms dealers' organization splinters under overwhelming pressure. The Serbian buyers attempt to secure their weapons shipment, while Reynolds frantically coordinates with corrupt officials, but their carefully constructed operation crumbles in the face of a legend reborn. Federal task force moving into position. Lisa reports through encrypted channels. State police special response teams have contained all corrupt units. The net is fully deployed. Through his enhanced optics, Thomas observes the deteriorating situation at the canyon's main entrance. Professional contractors abandon their defensive positions as his psychological warfare reaches its crescendo. The measured sound of spurs on stone echoes through the tunnel network, approaching from impossible directions, while hidden speakers carry the whispered legend of Lightning Hand's return. "Sir," the butcher's voice breaks through static-filled communications, raw fear evident in his tone. "We've lost all remaining teams in the lower tunnels, the men. They're saying he's everywhere at once, moving like a ghost, striking without warning." Thomas watches through surveillance feeds as Cruz attempts to rally his fragmenting forces. The arms dealer's authority crumbles as more men refuse orders to enter the underground network. Professional operators with years of tactical experience recognize the signs of a superior operation, understanding they face something beyond their capabilities. Getting multiple surrender requests. Sarah updates through secure channels. Contractors are breaking ranks, offering information in exchange for protection. They're terrified of what's hunting them in the darkness. His satellite phone vibrates with confirmation from Marshal Service contacts. International authorities, moving simultaneously across 3 continents. corruption network being dismantled at highest levels, evidence secured and transmitted. Reynolds paces near the tunnel entrance, his composed facade shattered as reports flood in. Through intercepted communications, Thomas listens to the corrupt officials' desperate attempts to contain the situation. "I don't care what it costs," Reynolds barks into his phone. "Get those state police units here now. This operation cannot fail." But Thomas has already ensured its failure. Throughout the underground network, his sophisticated countermeasures systematically isolate and neutralize remaining resistance. Emergency bulkheads seal strategic sections, while specialized audio systems create an atmosphere of overwhelming psychological pressure. Professional security teams find themselves cut off, disoriented, hunted by an opponent they cannot see. "Tom," Maria reports from her observation post, "more contractors surrendering. Even the hardcore professionals are breaking. The legend of Lightning Hand has become real for them, a tactical ghost they can't fight." Through his scope, Thomas watches the Serbian buyer's security chief confront crews near the weapons cache. Their argument carries across surveillance feeds, accusations and threats, revealing the operation's imminent collapse. "Your security is compromised beyond recovery," the chief states flatly. "Someone with extensive tactical experience has turned your entire infrastructure against us." Multiple vehicles approaching from the south, Jack updates through encrypted channels. Extraction teams attempting emergency evacuation. They're abandoning the weapons, trying to save what they can. Thomas allows himself a moment of grim satisfaction as his trap closes. The arms dealers thought they could control this territory through force and intimidation. Instead, they've walked into an operation months in the planning, every aspect calculated to dismantle their organization piece by piece. "All units initiate final phase," he radios to his allies. Each responds in sequence, Lisa coordinating with federal authorities, Maria preparing medical response teams, Jack maintaining surveillance coverage, Sarah monitoring desperate escape attempts. Justice descends on Devil's Canyon with precise, overwhelming force. "Tom," Sarah's voice carries quiet understanding. "They're making their last stand at the main tunnel entrance. Cruz is gathering every remaining team, trying to force an exit with the weapons shipment." Perfect. Thomas checks his specialized equipment one final time. Let them gather. Everything proceeds according to plan. Through his surveillance network, he watches the operation's endgame unfold. Reynolds orders his corrupt officers to establish a final defensive perimeter, while the Serbian buyers attempt to salvage what remains of their weapons cache. Professional contractors deploy remaining teams in desperate formation, still not understanding they face a legend made real. "Sir," a security team leader reports to Cruz, voice shaking with professional fear, "we've lost control of the entire infrastructure. Someone with military-grade experience has compromised every system, every route, every fallback position. We're not just being attacked, we're being systematically dismantled." Thomas activates the last elements of his counter-operation. Throughout Devil's Canyon, hidden systems create an environment of total tactical dominance. Communications fail in precise sequence, leaving teams isolated and vulnerable. The sound of his approach echoes from multiple directions, while emergency lights fail in carefully timed patterns, breaking the last remnants of professional resistance. The arms dealers and their corrupt allies thought they could take control of Shadow Creek through force and intimidation. Instead, they're about to learn why some legends persist, why the name Lightning Hand still commands respect and fear in equal measure. Justice returns to Devil's Canyon, delivered by a gunslinger whose reputation was earned through decades of relentless pursuit of those who thought themselves above the law. Dawn breaks over Shadow Creek as federal authorities process the aftermath of the night's operation. Through his surveillance network, Thomas observes the systematic dismantling of the arms dealers' organization. Federal agents secure the weapons cache, while state police special response teams take corrupt officials into custody. The Serbian buyers and their security teams surrender to international authorities, their sophisticated operation exposed and neutralized. Final count coming in, Lisa reports through secure channels. 37 arrests, including Reynolds and 6 other state officials. The weapons cache alone is valued at over $50 million. International task force confirming connections to arms trafficking networks across 3 continents. Thomas watches through his enhanced optics as Cruz is led away in handcuffs, the arms dealer's arrogance replaced by stunned disbelief. Beside him, Reynolds faces his own reckoning as federal agents present evidence of corruption reaching into the highest levels of state government. "Tom!" Sarah's voice carries quiet satisfaction through encrypted radio. "The contractors are talking, every one of them. They're offering information about other operations, other corrupt officials, other smuggling routes. The legend of Lightning Hand broke their professional discipline completely. His satellite phone vibrates with confirmation from Marshal Service contacts. Operation success confirmed. Criminal network exposed across multiple jurisdictions. Evidence being processed for international prosecution. Shadow Creek operation provided key intelligence for ongoing investigations." Through surveillance feeds, Thomas observes the transformation of Devil's Canyon. Federal forensics teams document the sophisticated tunnel network, while technical specialists analyze his tactical countermeasures. Professional observers study his methods with quiet admiration, recognizing the work of a tactical genius. Getting reports from across the state, Lisa updates. Multiple officials suddenly retiring or resigning, banks freezing suspicious accounts. The corruption network is collapsing under its own weight as evidence spreads. Maria's voice comes through secure channels. "The town is starting to wake up, Tom. People are emerging from their homes, talking to each other. For the first time in months, there's no fear in the streets. Shadow Creek is breathing again." Thomas allows himself a moment of satisfaction as he watches the sunrise paint the canyon walls. His months of careful planning, of gathering intelligence, of preparing this ground for the return of justice have paid off beyond expectation. "The FBI wants to know how you did it," Jack reports with a touch of amusement. "Their tactical specialists are studying your methods. The way you turned those tunnels into a psychological weapon, how you broke professional operators without firing a shot. They're calling it a masterclass in strategic pressure." Through his scope, Thomas observes the last of the corrupt officials being processed for transport. Sheriff Rivera and his compromised deputies face federal charges, while honest law enforcement officers reclaim their authority. The power structure that enabled criminal enterprise crumbles in the face of overwhelming evidence. "Federal task force requesting a meeting," Sarah mentions casually. "Seems they have other situations that might benefit from your particular expertise. Other territories where corruption has taken root, where legends might need to rise again." Thomas considers this as he performs final checks of his surveillance network. The arms dealers thought they could take control of Shadow Creek through force and intimidation. Instead, they learned why some reputations endure, why the name Lightning Hand still commands respect in the dark corners where justice struggles against corruption. "Town council meeting this afternoon," Maria reports. "People are already talking about rebuilding, about making Shadow Creek stronger. Your actions didn't just stop criminals. They gave this community back its courage." His phone buzzes with messages from across the law enforcement community, agencies requesting consultation, departments seeking tactical training, officials asking for help with their own corruption problems. The legend of Lightning Hand spreads anew, carrying stories of a gunslinger who turned modern technology and psychological warfare into weapons more effective than any bullet. "What now?" Sarah asks as they watch federal teams secure the last of the evidence. The town is safe, the criminals are in custody, the corruption is exposed. Is it time to return to quiet ranch life? Thomas allows himself a thoughtful smile as he considers the future. Through his surveillance feeds, he watches Shadow Creek come alive with renewed hope. Citizens reclaim their streets, while honest officials rebuild trust in local government. But his enhanced optics also catch glimpses of other vehicles on distant highways, other suspicious movements that suggest more battles await. "The ranch will always be home," he responds quietly. But Lightning Hand's work isn't finished. There are other communities under siege, other corrupt officials hiding in shadows, other territories needing redemption. Because some legends don't fade when justice is restored in one small town. They grow stronger, spreading hope to other dark places where good people need protection. The story of Lightning Hand continues, carrying a simple message to those who would prey on the innocent. Beware the quiet rancher, the hidden warrior, the gunslinger who turns fear itself into a weapon for justice. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.